Hello, everybody. Anthony Crane here with Pocket Coach, and today's experiment is on the product vision. So let me start my 5-minute timer. All right. So for the product vision, what is the problem we're trying to solve? The problem is people are often not on the same page regarding what the future should look like, right? And when they're not on the same page, people pull in opposite directions and everything gets messed up. I've actually done the product vision experiment with companies where when they were done, they canceled the project. And they said, if we hadn't have done the vision, we would have spent probably $500,000 on this project before we realized that it was worthless. So this saved $500,000 just by running this experiment. So a really valuable one here. Hypothesis that if we craft a shared vision, so not a product manager writing a vision, but a shared vision, one that we craft together in collaboration, that will ensure we pull in the same direction instead of accidentally working against one another. So this is very different than writing a vision and giving it. Also, this is a very light, agile vision, as you'll see. The pivot or persevere, this thing usually takes 4 hours to do. So set aside 4 hours for a product vision, you're good to go. And you might ask pivot or persevere at the 2-hour mark. And when you get good at it, you might get a lot faster. We'll see. Typical outcomes, you should absolutely increase your quality of your product as well as the productivity of the team because they're pulling in the same direction. Finally, for skill growth, in order to actually gain the skills in this, you have to have written the Agile product vision as a team, not as I gave it to you as a product manager or product owner or whatever. It's got to be done as a team. Okay. All right. So let's get into some of the assets. So the first asset, this is a PowerPoint deck and it's using SmartArt. If you're not familiar with SmartArt, it allows you to add and remove elements and the art just kind of automatically updates. It's very, very nice. You can also do this in Confluence. You could do this in Miro or Mural, drawing tool of your choice. Any of those will work. But the idea is this vision is largely visual. It is a visual vision, and that helps us get fast, light, and yet get on that same page. All right, so the first part of the vision is a North Star. So believe it or not, this first page is actually something. So XYZ would be your product. So, the Happy Meal vision, right? North Star, we need to attract more children into McDonald's restaurants, right? So that's your we need to statement, right? Or we need to craft a meal that would entice kids to eat at McDonald's. That's getting more specific. So this kind of a North Star for a product vision is not a what is the problem you're trying to solve kind of a vision. It's a what is the solution you're trying to create. So it's the opposite of what everybody else advises. Don't worry about the product trying to solve. We handle that through other techniques and practices. When it comes to the product vision, it's time now to say what you're going to do. So for example, ATMs, it might have been, we need to reduce costs of the bank. That's so vague. And yet the ATMs did that. We need to have machines on every corner that allow people to do banking, like withdrawing money and depositing funds. That's specific. And that's what you want in this North Star. Okay, we only got 2 minutes left, so I won't be able to go to that level of depth for the rest of this, but let's just see what's in this vision. You have a postcard from the future where you write a postcard to yourselves saying, hey, a year ago, you didn't know how great it was going to be. Let us tell you about it. And so that postcard can be quite inspirational. You also draw context. And so you can see there's an airplane here with 3 contexts around it. I'll go deeper on some of these in the second 5 minutes. Let's just see what else we got. We also have the inside view. What are the major things we have to build in order for our product to be successful? We also have the different users of our product and the major functionality we want them to be able to use when we're done. And then we also have KPIs for our product, and again, I'm using the equip model here, EQPP, but here I have some examples of how you might even fill that in. But your product KPIs are how do we know that the product is being successful? You think about that when you're doing your product vision. Current goals. So once you know your KPIs, okay, then what are the goals? To decrease time or increase resilience, et cetera. And again, this is using the IDEEM technique. Both the Equip and IDEEM techniques will have their own videos. There are also articles in Tech Beacon magazine already available, although this was QP back then, but it's Equip now. Anyway, both of these are techniques for how to measure anything, and those will be in separate videos. And then critical stakeholders. What are the kind of stakeholders we have? You can see that there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different types of stakeholders. So that's it. That's the whole vision. I'll go deeper on it in a second 5 minutes. One last thing before my 40 seconds is out. This particular asset library has a lot more assets in it. Tips on when to engage your stakeholders and how, some example visions that were written, a cheat sheet on how to figure out the problem behind the problem. Very powerful thing to do for a vision. How to create a measurable problem statement. Some tips from Six Sigma. Some constraints. There are lots of different constraints in a product, and so sometimes you want to capture those. Here's some guidance on how to do so. And finally, if you're into Word, I can't stand Word anymore for collaboration. I prefer like Confluence, but there's a template from way back when on how to do that as well. Okay, so that's the first 5 minutes, and you've kind of been introduced to what the visual vision does. I'm gonna go ahead and set a second 5-minute timer. And this time, I'm just gonna go a little deeper on some of the pages that we just saw. So if you think you got the hang of it, by all means, disconnect now. Otherwise, let me show you some of my favorite tips about these 5 pages. Okay, so postcard from the future. When well written, this can be super inspirational. You can see here, thanks for all the hard work. Because of that work, we can now get instantaneous farming recommendations. Now, by the way, you can write this from the perspective of the team or the customer, depending on the kind of transformation or product you're building. Get instantaneous farming recommendations by scanning a single plant with our phone. We can do that. Today, we can do that with our iPhones, right? So that's kind of funny. Route robotic tractors to problem areas without taking a human's valuable time. Predict our annual crop yields on demand with 95% accuracy, right? So this is what we can do. This is not possible today, but we're already thanking ourselves for the hard work. This is just a great way to paint the future. Okay, the context, this confuses a lot of people. I always thought that these were pretty straightforward, but I'm gonna do a little game with you. So imagine that your product is an airplane, okay? I asked you, well, what context do you see an airplane in? Like, where do you see an airplane? What context, where? And it's so funny how people get confused by this, but here are the answers. So pause if you want and think about where do you see an airplane, write down a piece of paper. All right, unpause. And then first of all, you might see an airplane at an airport. So that could be context 1, and you could actually replace it. Remember, these are smart art, so you can actually put context 4 here, right? And you can see how the art just updates itself. That's what I love about this particular tool. So context 1 might be an airport. Context 2 might be in the air, in the sky. That's a context for an airplane. Context 3 might be at inside the hangar. Context 4 might be when it's being manufactured. And context 5 might be after a crash, right? In a crash site. So when you look at different contexts, you're going to discover different users and different features. The users at the airport are quite different than the users at a crash site, right? And the features you need for an airport are quite different than the users of a crash site. A little morbid, I guess, but anyway, thinking about the different contexts your product might appear in can help you discover more user types, more features, and that's great for your product, okay? So you can list all your different contexts here, and people might say, oh, you think you're missing a context, and that's really great. Okay, now getting into the sub-products or solutions, right? So when you look at an airplane, what does it consist of? What does it collect? Cockpits, emergency management, passenger services, et cetera, et cetera. So you can think of the airplane as a bunch of components, and each of those components could be a sub-product. You can assign different teams to those sub-products. You could see how those products relate to one another, right? So helping you understand. Again, this is all about the product mentality. So if you haven't seen our projects to products videos and our videos about how to develop a product mindset instead of a project mindset, that is a massive game changer. So we'll have plenty of videos on the project to product mindset that we hope you, but this ties right into that, this idea of breaking down products and assigning teams ownership of products. So here you can see, once you understand your context, for each context, you can ask, okay, so what would be a user at the airport? Oh, how about a passenger? How about a gate agent, right? What would be a user at a crash site? Or what about a forensic specialist, right? So you can put those things down, and then you can say, what features do we have? And what's interesting is you can go back to your sub-products and say, all right, thinking about the cockpit, what features do we have for a passenger? None, okay? And that's fine. But when we talk about a pilot, then the features are massive for the cockpit. So by looking at your users and intersecting them across your product areas, you can discover features that way as well. Think about the forensic scientists. There might be cockpit features for a forensic scientist that are different than that they wouldn't have anything else here, but of course the black box is in there, right? By the way, back up here, the black box could have been your product. We just make black boxes, in which case the airplane might be our context, right? So that it also kind of scales that way. So again, looking at your users, cross-sectioning them with your product areas can help you discover some really rich features. For the equip technique, basically, how do we know that the airplane is doing well? So engagement. How much money are we earning, with our airplanes? How much money does it cost us to build those airplanes? Actually, productivity is where you're going to see cost. So revenue, number of subscribers, how many people are buying our airplanes? Quality, right? Defects, complaints, returns, that's not so great on an airplane, but how often do they have to maintain it? Could be something. Productivity, how much costs to produce it? How long does it take us to create them? How many can we create per period of time? That kind of stuff. And predictability is how good are we at hitting what we say we're going to do on the other three. So do we get the revenue we thought we were going to? Do we have the maintenance schedules we thought we would have? Do we have the costs we predicted we would have in advance? And so predictability is a great. Also, predictability is how flat that is. Like, or is it like wild, or is it flat? That's another great thing. So tough on an airplane, but you get the idea. IDEEM is just asking what would increase or decrease. Or what will we enable that we couldn't do before? What are we going to eliminate that's not valuable? And maintain is a funny one. That one is don't mess it up. So for example, you might say, when you improve productivity, don't reduce quality of life, right? So maintain quality of life. It's just a catch. It's just to make sure that you don't mess up something that's already good, or that needs to stay where it's at. And finally, I'll just wrap this up with the user types here. So users are the people, stakeholder types. The users actually use your product. The sponsor is paying for your product. The insiders, they're helping you to build the product. They are on the team itself. So your team are the insiders. And if you have 3 teams working on it, all 3 teams are insiders. Partners are people outside of that you don't have any interaction with. They're partners. They help you, however, you might have interaction, but they don't build it. They help you get it used once it's built. Okay. Governance are people who make sure that we're, crossing our T's and dotting our I's. Influencers are people who have political clout. And if they're not happy, they can actually get in our way. It's very useful to know your influencers. And providers are people who are like you outsource parts of it to, and you get that back, and they have very little visibility into how they do the work. So those are your user types. Great. Why do you list these out? So you can go talk to them and figure out what they think the vision should be, and make sure that you're all pulling in that same direction. Okay, well, that's it. My name is Anthony Crane, and that was the product vision experiment. And good luck if you try it.